So we're going to jump in to kind of the second half here, and I will go ahead and share my screen. All right, and I got the thumbs up from Cole that you can see it. So we're talking state, community, and campus policies, and in full disclosure, this is, it's not really going in depth on any of those areas. So it's trying to just highlight a couple things in looking at the state, but we wanted to try and make this as applicable as possible for you and your campuses. And a lot of that is going to be actually in breakout group time, where you're going to take a look at some questions associated with campus policies. With 4 schools, a part of, well, 3 technically today, as a part of this training, it doesn't make tons of sense to spend time on specific university college policies at your campuses. And so that's kind of the approach that we're going to go. Hopefully this is a primer, and then as you are moving forward with your ambassador group and your lead, that you'll be able to review your own specific policies more. So just kind of a little bit how we got here. So Executive Order 151 by Governor Cooper extended the Safer at Home Phase 2. And so we're in that through September 11th. That website there, I'm not going to click on it. Excuse me, let me go back. But that previous slide, if you do want a little bit more details on that, you certainly can go there. So just a couple of points quickly in terms of Governor Cooper's mask mandate. And so it can be enforced by police in each county. And then mask usage on campus and off. Even now, it's interesting to kind of see how that is unfolding and where people are using masks, in some cases where they're not, where possibly they should be. But this is general information from Phase 2. And so bars, gyms, and indoor entertainment venues continue to stay closed. Continued face covering mandate in public spaces. Gatherings remain capped at 10 people indoors and 25 outdoors. There are some exceptions. College campuses with the ability to host in-person classes, that's clearly an exception. Religious organizations, churches, they can be an exemption to that. And then retail is retail, restaurants, personal care services open at 50% capacity. So let me click on that. I'm not going to spend much time on this. If you are looking for just a quick resource that you could utilize, and let me scroll down and show you the key on the bottom, because that really does help. But the green is open, the purple is encouraged, the half circle of green is 50% capacity. The circle of yellow is open, but with additional restrictions and then closed. And this chart, it basically just walks you through the different phases. And so this was the initial order, the stay at home. It transitions to the modified stay at home Phase 1, and then gets into the safer at home Phase 2, which is where we're still at with that extension. So if you were ever looking for a little resource that says, what is going on in Phase 2, I found this to be one helpful resource that you can utilize. All right, kind of transitioning to campus policies. And this quickly opens up a very complex situation, as you are all aware. 6 months ago, many of these policies didn't exist. And so administrators and faculty and staff, they are trying to figure out, have been trying to figure out, and in some ways continue to what are the policies that need to be in place with keeping everyone safe, and for you all, the goal of keeping your campuses open. So these, these are random things that I just kind of put down there, but symptom checking, knowing what the policy is at your institution when it comes to that. What's the protocol if you're not feeling well? As an ambassador, that's probably critical, that you want to be able to convey that information that you come across that are under the weather, that may be exhibiting some COVID-related symptoms. And so you're definitely going to want to know that. I thought I was on a call the other day that was really highlighting on a lot of college campuses during the day is probably not the big concern. It's more kind of after 5 p.m. It's on the weekends. It's people that are going off campus, and so schools are certainly taking all of those things into consideration when it comes to drafting policies, exercise, mask usage, student dorms, on and on, with these different policies that have needed to be created and that are in place at your institutions. I did want to this is one slide I added very quickly as you're thinking about your role as an ambassador. You are an employee of this school, and so be mindful that you are expected to protect students' personal information. I think the easiest situation for me to think of is if you're involved when it comes to helping support students that may be in isolation or quarantine settings. That you would have some you would have some understanding that that student might have COVID at that point, and so you do want to protect that student's information. So even though it's not a direct source per se, you're not seeing someone's medical file, but that still does align with the understanding of HIPAA and with VRPA about protecting students' personal information. So I really want to maximize the time. This is a very quick segment. We only gave it 20 minutes today. You might kind of take a quick screenshot of this, or at least have these questions in mind. We're going to divide you into groups again by school. Hopefully the sound works, Brevard. I've got my fingers crossed. If it doesn't, maybe try and use the chat function. But think about these questions. So as you have reviewed and continue to think about your campus policies, what reactions and or concerns do you have? What have students had the easiest time adapting to? What have students had the hardest time adapting to? And where can ambassadors make the biggest impact on your campuses? Okay, so let me stop sharing my screen. I can try and even put those questions into the chat. And I'm just double checking the breakout rooms. I think we're in good shape. And we're probably only looking at 8 or 9 minutes tops on this, and then we'll bring you back, and we may or may not have time to discuss this very much. But let me go ahead and open up those rooms. Again, I'll put those questions in the chat. Hopefully some of you have them in mind, at least to start some dialogue here. All right, I think most folks are hopefully back. Looking for a brave school, perhaps, just to unmute. Hopefully there's a kind of a designated person, and just if you're brave enough, just walk us through maybe a couple of these questions, the concerns that come to mind as you kind of think about the policies to date.
A concern we talked about is people not really wearing their masks on campus. So we kind of want to find a way to enforce that and encourage that. And also like following the exit doors, entering doors, like so they know which area is safe to like enter and exit, so that people don't really come into contact as much.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Yuri. That's really good stuff for all of us to be thinking about, but maybe that's something that the Brevard ambassadors, some of those things that you're keeping in mind as you're working on some ideas. Maybe one more school. You can kind of lump some of these together, I guess. Concerns, the easiest, the hardest? What are you finding?
A concern that the Montreat group spoke about was like socializing and social distancing, especially when we're in line waiting to get our temperatures checked to get our meals. It's really hard to manage taking temperatures and seeing the campus clear up while trying to make sure people waiting in line aren't kind of clumping together.
Okay, yes, thank you. Thanks for that feedback and for sharing. So, all right, well, we know this is pretty fast paced. We're gonna move right along. And so we're transitioning into, there's a quick segment on self-care, because we know that that's vitally important, that you're remaining well so then that you can help others.
All right, y'all, I'm gonna shift to sharing my screen so we can spend some time talking about taking care of yourself. I will tell you, we are on the downslope for this, and I promise if you jump in and participate, it will go a lot faster than if we're all just sitting here waiting. So I want to start off by introducing you to a really quick tool for your tool belt that can be used for self-care, and it's called 5-3-1, and it stands for 5 deep breaths, 3 good things, and 1 act of kindness. And researchers have taken a look at what the impact of 5-3-1 as a practice is, and in fact, medical providers who use 5-3-1 as a daily practice were less likely to have medical errors. They were less likely to make mistakes when they were seeing patients. I just think that's interesting. So what I'm going to do is lead a count for your 5 deep breaths. Before we do that, I just want you to get comfortable in your seats. Feet on the floor. You can put your hands on your belly because we want to make these belly breaths, meaning breaths that are pushing out or inflating your belly as opposed to happening up here in your chest. So go ahead and start by taking a deep breath in. That's going to be breath 1. And breathe out. Breathe in for 2. And out. In for 3. And out. In for 4. And out. In for 5. And out. Now, if you're taking those deep belly breaths, you might even notice that you feel a little lightheaded because of all that nice oxygen going to your brain. The next part of this is thinking of 3 good things. I just want you to think of 3 good things going on in your life. They can be big or small. It could be the snack that you had. It could be that you get to see a loved one this weekend. It could be something you heard about or read about or experienced yourself. Just take a moment to come up with 3 good things happening in your life. Can I get a couple of folks to share using the chat at least one of the good things you came up with? Use the chat. Tell us a good thing you came up with. Lizzie says being able to stay in a dorm. Yeah, for a lot of people, that's a good thing. I'd love to hear from a couple more folks. Just a good thing. Oh, Sabrina, sushi for dinner? Jealous. Lizzie says, and getting along with the roommate. Very nice. Ruben says, being healthy. Nice. Thank you all. And then the final piece of this is the 1 act of kindness. I'm just going to ask you to take a moment to think of 1 act of kindness that you could do for yourself or somebody else? One act of kindness you could do for yourself or somebody else. All right, can I get 2 folks to share in the chat an act of kindness that's coming up for you or that you're thinking of? Lizzie always compliments people. Nice. Yuri says, help a classmate with any work they're having. Nice, thank you all. So 531, just a super simple tool for your tool belt related to self-care. I know that you already do some things related to self-care. We all have to do things related to self-care to just keep going in what's an often hard world. So I want to hear from you in the chat. What do you already do related to self-care? What do you already do? Run. Yeah, Raquel says run. That's a great one. Great strategy. Moving our body is good for our body. It's good for our mind. It's good on so many levels. Maya, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, says pampering myself. Lizzie says, I like to take a moment to drink a cup of hot chocolate to de-stress. That sounds awesome. Yuri's eating healthy. Lizzie says, maybe not very healthy, but it helps. Well, I wouldn't judge that. I mean, we know chocolate's good for us. And some things are healthy for our souls, right? Thank you all for sharing that. Think about the things that you already do and make sure that you can keep doing those. Often our self-care practices are the things that go by the wayside when we get busy or when life gets hard. So, a couple other questions for you to respond in the chat. First, how do you know when you get overwhelmed? How do you know when you get overwhelmed? Anxiety. Yeah, anxiety. Other folks, how do you know when you get overwhelmed? Joshua says, stop being productive. Ah, me too, right? I just want to sit on the couch. Maya says, when your schoolwork isn't up to par. Yeah, when you're not able to do the work that you want to do or do the kind of quality work you want to do. Good. Ruben, can't sleep. Yeah, can't sleep. That's a warning sign for me too. Debate whether or not going to class is worth it. Yeah, that's definitely a warning sign you're starting to feel overwhelmed. My next question for you is, how does your body feel? Lizzie mentioned heart rate. So what else comes up for you when you're feeling overwhelmed? How does your body feel? Lizzie already mentioned heart rate. Yuri says slow, tired. Lizzie says tense. Sabrina says numb. Yeah, these are all things that we can watch for. Feelings in our body we can watch for. So my next question is, what thoughts come up for you? Yuri mentioned wondering if going to class is worth it. What thoughts come up for you? I know I start to feel like I can't do all this. Lizzie says, I want to drop this class. I want to drop this class. I want to drop this job. I want to drop this relationship, right? You might want to start to drop things. thoughts that come up for you? When you're getting overwhelmed, what thoughts come up? For me, I sometimes start to feel like a failure. Start to think about being a failure. I start to think that, you know, I've tricked people into thinking I'm good or competent at what I do. It's that imposter syndrome. I don't know if anybody else experiences that. Yeah, Lizzie resonates with that. Anybody else willing to share what thoughts come up when you get overwhelmed? I know it's a vulnerable question. Thanks for contributing, those who felt comfortable contributing. So often we start to have sometimes even kind of scary thoughts, or thoughts that make us want to either check out of what we're doing or to just stop what we're doing. And so taking care of ourselves is one way that we can start to counter some of those thoughts, some of those feelings in our body, some of that knowledge about when we are overwhelmed. One of the main things that we can do is actually set some boundaries. And setting boundaries can feel scary. It can feel like a big thing. But actually, we already set a lot of boundaries in our own lives. And taking care of ourselves, part of that is setting boundaries and expanding some of those boundaries we already set. I like to use this image here from an in-flight brochure about safety. Flight attendants, if you've ever been able to fly, flight attendants will say, put on your own oxygen mask first, right? Put on your own oxygen mask before you help even kids or other people. And that to me is a really important analogy for self-care. There is very little we can do for other people if we aren't taking care of ourselves. So I want you to remember this analogy. Put on your own oxygen mask first. You got to take care of yourself before you can care for others. Another way to set boundaries is by saying no, even to the role of a student health ambassador. If you can't pick up that shift or you can't do that additional thing that you've been asked to do, it is okay and acceptable, and in fact important to say no, even to parts of this role. The next thing I want to say about setting boundaries is trust yourself. You know that feeling in your stomach or your chest that you sometimes get when something doesn't feel right? Recognize and honor that feeling. It's an important feeling, and it gives us information that we need to follow. And then finally, schedule breaks for yourself. Schedule that, put it into your schedule, and really work to protect that time. That time often gets infringed on or eroded as we start to get busier and busier, but it's really important to protect. Yeah, Lizzie's hot chocolate breaks. Protect that time, Lizzie. I want to talk briefly now about building a self-care practice. As you move into this role, it's important that you have a self-care practice. This work is a marathon. It is not a sprint. And to be able to do it in the long term, we got to take care of ourselves. So I want to encourage you to think both in terms of maintenance self-care, so things that you mentioned like running and eating and sleeping, and also emergency self-care. So emergencies are when we start to get overwhelmed, when our bodies start to feel tense, when we start to have those thoughts about, I can't do this, I need to quit, I want to drop this class. That's when the emergency self-care can kick in. So having a few strategies in your back pocket or tools in your tool belt that you can use in an emergency is really helpful. I'll talk about some strategies for that in a moment. So one of the best things that you can do to take care of yourself, and many of you mentioned this already, is moving your body. And there's research to back this up. Back when we lived on the savannas and had to protect ourselves from saber-toothed tigers and woolly mammoths, stress hormones kicked us into overdrive, and they really helped us stay alive. But now what happens is our stress hormones get activated when we're sitting in traffic, when we're frustrated with something happening related to class, when we are dealing with the little stressors every day that add up. And our bodies can't tell the difference between feeling stressed about somebody cutting you off in traffic and the possible rustle of a saber-toothed tiger in the bushes, right? So our bodies still react in the same way. We get flooded with adrenaline, our cortisol levels go up, and it becomes hard to take care of ourselves, and it becomes hard to pay attention to our surroundings because we're so focused on staying alive. One of the best things that we can do to complete the stress response cycle is to move our bodies, right? It's a way of communicating to our lizard brains that you've gotten away from the stressor. Another way to communicate to our lizard brains that we're okay is hugging somebody for 20 seconds. Now, ideally, this would be somebody who is in your bubble, somebody that you're comfortable hugging, and 20 seconds, let me tell you, it's a long time. But give it a try. Research indicates that it helps us complete or break off from that stress response cycle. In addition, being careful about our sleep, eating habits, and our substance use. These are things that can cue us into knowing that our self-care is a little bit off, if our sleep is off, if our eating is off, if our substance use changes. Staying connected to friends and family is super important. Having somebody you can go to, having somebody you can talk to and just be like, hey, I just need to vent, I just need to complain about this thing, and then we can move on. That's really powerful. One strategy that I highly recommend for emergency self-care is writing a to-do list for when you feel stressed or overwhelmed. When we're in that stress response cycle, when we're in that lizard brain of just trying to survive, it becomes really hard to remember the tools in our tool belt, the coping skills and the stress relievers that we know work for us. What I actually do is I keep a list beside my bed of the things that I know work for me, like taking a walk, like cuddling with my dog, like eating a meal that I really like talking to my friend. I know these things work. When I'm stressed, it becomes hard to think of those things as possible solutions. So now, when I'm stressed, I don't have to remember all the things that I know to do. I can just look at that list. So I definitely recommend writing a to-do list for things you can do, when you feel stressed or overwhelmed. So I have a question for you, and I'd love to hear folks either unmute or respond in the chat. We talked about self-care. The next level up from that is community care. So taking care of each other. And that's your really primary role as a student health ambassador, is supporting and caring for each other. And I want to ask you, how do you create a community of care within your group of student health ambassadors and then also on your campus? So how do you create a community of care? Unmute or use the chat. Lizzie says, wash my hands. Yeah. Yuri says, be there when somebody needs you. Yeah. Or say, I'm sorry, I can't be here for you right now, but maybe so-and-so can. Or I can't be here for you right now, but can we check in tomorrow if you don't have the capacity? Yeah, wear my mask, reaching out to check on how people are doing. Yeah, check on friends. Make it a habit in your student health ambassador group to check in with each other. As we've had weekly meetings with our smaller teams, we've done check-ins. How are you doing today? It's a really simple question, but creating space to discuss that is really powerful. So I want to encourage you to create a community of care in your student health ambassador group, and then work in your student health ambassador group to extend that community of care to your whole campus. I know that's not an easy ask, but it's an important one nonetheless. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen there. Anybody have questions, comments, or concerns related to taking care of yourself?
I would just jump in and say, for me, I feel like it's one thing to know that information, and then it's something else to be able to put that into practice on a regular basis, and especially when I'm stressed. So I think keep some of those things in your toolkit can be really, really helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, thank y'all. We'll turn it over to Kenda to start to talk about the next piece.
All right, can you guys hear me? Okay, yep, oh good, excellent. Hey, I am brand new to this training, meaning I just got to jump on. I had a couple meetings this afternoon. So I would love to see y'all's face. If you can unclick or share your video, I would love to see your face, to see who I'm talking to. I'm so excited. Yep, I see some names. I see some people hopping on. It's so fun to see people from Mars Hill, from Montreat, Brevard. I feel like one of our dreams, or one of my working with students, has always been to collaborate with other colleges on campus in this area. So it's been fun to actually do this. It's so great to see y'all's faces. Thank you so much for coming today and being a part of this training. I think what we get to do next, what I get to lead you through, is to really do the meat of it, to do the meat of the, I'm trying to think, how do I, oh, can you guys see my face? Because I feel like all I see is my name. Can you just see my name? Because I'm logged in twice. Don't you love technology? Okay, so sorry guys, I was like, you can only see my name. I'm like, I tried to put the light on me today so you could see my face. Hey, what I'm gonna lead you guys through is some really helpful practical tools on how to actually have these conversations. So I heard you guys say that you're nervous about maybe a policy about somebody not wearing a mask. Like, how do you actually talk to somebody without coming up and appearing very mean, very rude, and also feel confident to actually say what you need to say? So we're going to go through some meat, some of the skills practicum part of talking and working with other students. So I'm going to share my screen. I think, let's see. I'm going to share this one. Okay, so you guys can see my screen. I'm going to hit present. That should work. Okay, so we're going to talk about supporting your peers and exactly how to do that. So I would like to ask in the chat box, what makes somebody approachable? So if you need to use this picture for your reference, I'd love to have you use it. But if you are approachable, what does that mean? And what does that actually physically look like? Physically, yeah, let's start there. What does it physically look like if you are approachable to another student to talk to? What would you guys say? In the chat box. I'm finding the chat box. There it is. Great, happy, smiling, checking in with, okay, checking with friends, eye contact, happy, smiling, kind. Love the eye contact. I think that's huge. Body language, facial expressions say everything. I agree, Sabrina. Jonathan, you say an opening and welcoming posture. So not like maybe hunching down, but really opening up and feeling connected almost before you are connecting. Good attitude, uncrossed arms. Absolutely, Lizzie. What about, has anybody ever told you anything about pointing your feet? Has anybody ever heard about where your feet are pointed? That came up in last training, and I had not heard that, but it makes perfect sense. Pointing your feet, what would that have to do with being approachable? Does anybody want to put a guess in the chat?
The TV's broken.
Oh, perfect timing. I have a kid who's watching Paw Patrol, so, you know, hashtag work from home. They say it all works out, right? Oh, okay, I'll be good, 1 minute. Okay, so feet pointing, Joshua, you mentioned, or whether you want to leave or not. That's actually true, Lizzie. Are you pointing towards, if you're focused on them? Yes, that has a lot to do with it. If you're pointing and looking at the person talking to them, you're more engaged as opposed to wanting to turn or to walk away. They almost feel like you're in a rush or that you're wanting to leave before you even connect with them. So that can, your body language, even your physical appearance has everything to do about being approachable. And we want to help you guys be approachable, right? That's the whole point of being a student health ambassador. Because if you're not approachable, you can't help people, or people are not going to feel comfortable coming up to you to offer support. So really it takes intentionality on how we even physically present ourselves to our community. Do you have a bad habit, Lizzie? Hey, listen, we all have bad habits. This is just to bring it to attention to see if we can pay attention now to it. So let's talk about listening. So we talked about physically. How does somebody know you are listening to them? Has anybody ever had an example of maybe you thought that person was listening to you, but you could see clearly they were not? How did that come across? What was happening? How do you know somebody is listening to you? Go ahead and put it in the chat box. Or you can even unmute yourself, to be honest. I'd love to hear your voices. Does anybody want to offer any verbal unmuting yourself? What does it mean? How do you know somebody is listening to you? Yep, I see eye contact, they respond, they're off their phone, nodding their head and their eye contact, yeah? Body language. What else? Anybody else have any examples of how you know somebody's listening to you? They're not doing other things like gathering items up, looking around, packing their bag, trying to find something. What about when they are quick to respond? Almost like they talk, they finish your sentence, or they offer a solution before you even ask the problem. Has anybody ever experienced that? Yep. Yep. Joshua, you say they may repeat some of the things they said. They're thinking of what to respond instead of listening. Yep. Lizzie said, I do that and I feel kind of rude when I do. Oops. You know what? I think it's a skill, and that's what I'm going to just kind of talk about a little bit, that what we're going to be talking about with me, at least in the next 10, 15, 20 minutes, is the skill set of listening, the skill set of knowing how to talk to somebody. Because you would think it would be easy. You think it would be super easy to talk to somebody about wearing a mask or kind of backing up and creating social distance, but it's really not that easy. And so I want to give you opportunity to develop and to strengthen that skill. So I'm going to try to close the door again. See if I can outlive Paw Patrol here. Okay, let's see. Okay, so things that keep us from listening internally. So this is not external things, these are internal barriers. Letting the mind wander, prejudging the speaker. So if somebody comes up to you and you're talking on campus, you almost assume what they're going to talk to you about, or assume that they're going to have this attitude about a certain topic. Maybe rushing to resolve or to give an answer, showing signs that you have to go, dismissing or invalidating feelings. I think you guys mentioned every single one of these, so you guys are on it. So what are some external things that keep us from listening? Distractions, listening environment, loud music, feeling very public. It's really hard to pay attention to somebody when you have a lot of things going on. For example, Paw Patrol in my situation, but also it could be things like a loud coffee shop, or it could be your text messages going off, you know, the little ding, 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 or it could be other things that keep us from really listening and paying attention to our friends and our community around us. So these are all barriers that we need to consider and to think about. I'm curious, and you can say this, you can unmute, or you can put in the chat box, but what do you feel like is the hardest thing to overcome when you're talking to somebody? Let's say somebody comes up to you and they wanted to talk to you. What is the hardest thing that you've experienced in wanting as a distraction, as a barrier? Does anybody want to share? I'm curious. What is the hardest thing?
The problem I really have is like just trying to come up with something to respond with.
Having a really good outcome, or having a really good comment or solution. Absolutely. Especially if you're being in this role as a support student health ambassador, you want to be seen as the person who has an answer or has the resource or has something. When you don't, you're like, ooh, I gotta figure something out. That pressure, absolutely. What else?
Actually being understood. Like, you can talk all day, but for someone to actually, like, understand where you're coming from, I always have that problem.
You know, it's so hard because we are who we are for years in the making, of years of shaping our perspective, of years of shaping the word choices that come frequently and quickly. And that's the same for every one of us in this training. Every one of us has a very long history of why we are the way we are. And so we have to almost respect that in ourselves, but also respect that in everybody else, that we're not going to change anybody in one conversation. It's just not how it works. And I know you guys are probably experiencing that, but it's just hard. All right. I have, is this, let's see, I think I have to close this. Okay, I have a fun video. Do you guys like Friends? I like Friends. So you love Friends? Okay, so I'm gonna play a video, and I thought it'd just be fun because who doesn't love Friends, and it's kind of fun. So let's see if this works. No one told me that was gonna be this way. Jobs are joking.
I'm pregnant. And you're the father, by the way? You got it.
Jobs are joking. Not away.
No one could get him to forgive us.
I don't know.
I'm telling you. I can do it.
Yeah, you can do it.
It's like you're always stuck in second gear.
This crazy-eyed, hairy beast man. He was like a Bigfoot or a Yeti or something. Hi, just so you know, we didn't mean to fog you. We actually thought you were like a Yeti or something. Hi.
So you like the short hair better?
What? Yeti? Danny?
Hasn't been your day, you know, even though you
Steve? Hello?
I'll be there for you. I'll be there for you. I'll be there for you.
You two are happy, then I'm happy for you. I'm fine.
Really?
Absolutely. I'm fine. Totally fine. I don't know why it's coming out all loud and squeaky, because really, I'm fine.
Joe? Well, I guess Joey went home. Oh, and look, there's still one box that I have to unpack. Oh my God, you almost gave me a heart attack.
Oh. My best friend and my sister, I cannot believe this.
Oh, sorry, but it's true. I love him too.
My best friend and my sister. I cannot believe this.
Your breakfast so far, things are going great.
Let's put aside the fact that you accidentally picked up my grandmother's ring and you accidentally proposed to Rachel. People do this.
I don't really know what that means.
I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I wanted to just share those videos because like you guys were talking about, listening is really hard. It can be hard. There's a lot of things, but it's still our responsibility to make sure our physical appearance and our connection with students is spot on, because what we're doing on our campuses is really good work. And I want to equip you with this skill set to be able to connect with your students and to share and to help them and support them this semester. So let's be real. Let's talk about if somebody comes up to you and you don't agree with them. Or maybe somebody asks you a question and you don't know the answer. Or maybe that somebody has an anxiety attack in front of you and you're like, I don't know what to do with you. This person's like having this mental health breakdown right in front of me. These are very real things that could happen. And so I want to provide you with some tools and some ideas and some words and phrases to use. Has anybody ever experienced, maybe since school has already started with you guys, has anybody ever experienced somebody talking to you and you don't agree with them necessarily with what they're saying or how they're saying it?
Yep.
You're like, I got that. Do you feel comfortable sharing? I'd love to hear.
I mean, if we're being honest here, it's like everything that's been going on. It's not just the coronavirus, it's also people's political views. Politics tends to always get brought up somehow in any conversation that I get into. I don't know how, but politics is a very like sensitive subject now, especially with presidential campaigns and stuff coming up and like us voting in November. I don't know. I feel like definitely that's like one thing that I get like an anxiety attack with. I'm just like, confrontation, it's not really my forte. I don't really like it.
You know, and I think you're spot on. I think that there isn't anything that's held independently, meaning we're not just going to have a conversation about wearing masks and it not have the ability to at least to go into whether people think it's important or not. And whether that is because who said what recently, and then that's because of what department supports that and what presidential campaign, you know, it just is going to be an interweb of thoughts and emotions and feelings and histories of the perception and the new what we're learning and what keeps coming out. It's going to be hard. So I don't think that we're ever going to agree 100% with anybody. And so that's really a challenge because we want them to understand us and where we're coming from, but at the same time, we want to keep the community safe. You know, it's this tricky balance as far as overall community reaching our goals to stay on campus, to stay open, to stay in our dorms, but at the same time, to get the message across of the importance and where the foundation of it is very thick with the interwebs of different perceptions and different ideas, ideology, and different trains of thought, to be honest. So it is hard. And so what I want to offer you is the fact that we're going to have to challenge with compassion, and we're going to have to be okay with not knowing, and we're going to probably have lots of conversations where we don't even feel like we were heard, or that what we said was successful, that people completely ignore us, or that we are left to be seen as a person in the wrong. Like, we're going to have lots of those conversations, and it's really hard for that to be the case. But I want you to know that our work is still important. It's still valid to keep putting forward with the information and the education so that we can stay on campus. We can have our goals of having a very low transmission rate on our campus and to really help and support our students. And so I just want to encourage you to challenge those people with compassion, but not with our hope of getting them on our side, but to really challenge them, to give them an opportunity to think, and giving them the questions and the hey, well, what do you think about this? Or how would this ever happen? And to be okay with not knowing, and to support with empathy. So as we talk a little bit about empathy, I'm curious, what would you guys say the difference is between empathy and sympathy? Have you guys heard those words? I'm sure you have. I'm sure you've had a class or two about empathy and sympathy. Does anyone want to unmute themselves or in their chat box share what they know about empathy and sympathy? I'm curious.
Empathy is kind of like putting yourself in another person's shoes, understanding where they're coming from, and sympathy is more like giving them your condolences.
Yeah, excellent. I love that. Anybody else? I want to acknowledge the chat that I just now saw from Lizzie saying, yes, I keep seeing homophobia and transphobia. Yes, that is a very real thing that's happening in our culture and our campuses. And so hopefully you'll leave here with some skills and some phrases maybe to use. And if not, we'd love to follow up with you one-on-one to make sure you feel like you have some words to use in order to support and help those students. So really quickly, what was it Joshua? Is that, you mentioned that? Okay, good. Okay, thank you for sharing, Joshua. I'm going to I love video clips. I hope you guys are okay with that. I've got who all has seen this little clip of Brene Brown's Empathy versus Sympathy? Have you seen it? Will you give me a thumbs up? I'm curious. Okay, you've seen it. Oh, several have not seen it. Oh, good. This makes me so happy because it's so good. Okay, so as we start talking about how to work with students and how to actually confront students and how do we talk to them about campus policies and helping educate students to have a good, healthy support system on campus, we really do need to approach it with empathy and not so much sympathy. And I'll explain a little bit in this video about what the difference is.
So what is empathy and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. At least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
All right, so, oops, let me pause that. Okay, so let me ask you, what has it been like on campus? You guys have all been on campus for about a week. What has it been like? What's the feelings there? I'm curious, what are you guys experiencing? You can unmute yourself, you can put in the chat box, whatever you feel like you feel comfortable with. What does it feel like? What are some of the thoughts, the attitudes? I'm just curious. I know it's like on our campus, and I can tell you, but I'd love to hear how it is on yours. Are people excited to be back? Are they nervous? Are they...
I've spoken with some students who are really excited to be back because their living situation here at school is a lot better than their living situation at home.
Yeah. So maybe even grateful or hopeful, maybe. That's good. Yeah. Anything else? Any other reasons? What or any other attitudes that people have, or thought process that people have shared with you?
I
Oh,
know
you're
a
not
lot
back
of
at
people
Marshall.
are.
Sorry. Go on.
Oh, I know a lot of people are worried right now
A lot of
about
people are
an
worried.
outbreak or anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So when they say they're worried, do you see that physically, or what some words have you heard them say or use? Maybe the
Well,
word worry.
they usually just communicate it verbally. Like they'll be like, I'm kind of worried this school year is gonna end too early and we'll go back to online school.
Yeah. Okay. I know our campus is the first, so we've been open for about 3 weeks now, and the first 2.5 weeks, because it just has started to shift a little bit even this week, is it's been extremely negative, extremely pessimistic, and just super worried that we're going to get shut down and that people are not following the rules. So they get mad when they see things and they get upset and frustrated and they kind of internalize it. And so I guess I just wanted to ask you these things because these are all feelings that we can connect with, right? The video that we're talking about with Brene Brown just now is that the whole point of empathy is to connect with those feelings. And so when you're talking with students about these situations, these scenarios that we're about to put up and ask you what would you do in these scenarios, is I want you to think about identifying with the feeling. Like, what is a feeling they're feeling in this moment, and can you connect with that? Because that's what separates us, or that's what connects us. You know, I think you saw my 3-year-old, he popped in here and he doesn't have a lot of words to say with phrases. He doesn't know some of the language to use when it comes to his emotions, but I can connect with him on feelings. So a lot of times it's like, did that make Eli sad? And so I can say, because I know what sad feels like, he knows what sad feels like. And so I can say, oh, I'm so sorry you felt sad. Would you like a hug? And so that is a way we can connect with people, even if we don't even talk about the policies necessarily or about what we think our perception is. Can you connect with the person that you're talking to with the emotion so that they can feel supported? And a very minimum, can they feel supported by you, even if you don't necessarily agree with how they're saying it or what they're saying? Does that make sense? Can I get a thumbs up if you understand what I'm talking about? Thumbs up. Good. See a few thumbs up. Good, excellent. Okay, so let's move on to specific scenarios. Let me share my screen again. Okay. All right, so let's talk about being a bystander. That is a fancy term we often toss around a lot, but what does the word bystander actually even mean? Does anybody want to unmute themselves and share what a bystander is? And would you consider yourself a bystander? Let's see.
I think that's kind of when like something's happening and someone might just be watching, like they're just standing by.
Yeah. It could be you, an official role, like it could be you working. You could be in your role, being paid, or as a student health ambassador. It could be you playing on the courts, playing basketball, or going to school, or going to class, walking. You are always a bystander. And I guess the difference would be between an active and a passive bystander. Between the active and passive, what would you say the difference is? What's the difference? That's an easy word to describe, active versus passive, but how would that play in with being a bystander? What's the difference between an active and a passive bystander?
An active bystander would be someone who like gets involved, while a passive one would just be off to the side.
Yeah, that's true. And you can be a passive, I mean, you can be taking action, Ruben, I love that. An active bystander is actually that does something. And so there's lots of ways you can be active. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be the direct contact, the direct intervention. You could be the one to go get the RA, or to go get your hall director, or to go get somebody like a professor. That's still being active. Passive is when you choose not to do anything. I want to share you a really quick story personally. So about, I guess now, almost 12 years ago, I was in grad school. And my grad assistantship, what I did while I was in grad school was lead an outdoor adventure learning community. So we had a group of students that I would take on backpacking trips and things like that. And one of the things that we were doing is we were getting ready for a big trip. And so my supervisor and I were going grocery shopping. And if you've ever been on a camping trip, you know that you have to buy certain groceries and you have a lot of things to do before the camping trip or the big hike. And so we were going around that Friday morning to all different kinds of stores, and we were really running late. We had to meet our students by, I think it was like 2 or 3 p.m. so that we could check the gear and then we could get on the road and to get moving. And so we were going through an intersection. And do you guys ever have those intersections at home where it's notorious for a car accident? It's almost like that. It's like, why is that even either still exists, or why isn't there another stoplight? Because it just always seems there's an accident there every time. I know I have those, and I think it seems like a lot of towns and communities have those intersections. So we were going through the intersection, and it was really busy that day. And I remember we were in a big 15-passenger van. So you know how those feel when you're driving? It feels like you're just in a huge, and it's just bouncy, right? So I remember bouncing and driving really fast through the intersection. And I remember seeing very clearly, we were passing down in the middle of the intersection. We saw a guy laying on the ground next to his motorcycle. And it was very evident that he had an accident. I don't remember another car nearby. I don't remember it appearing to be like a vehicle collision. I just remember seeing a man on the ground and a motorcycle laying next to him. What do you think a great bystander would have done? Let me ask, what do you think they would have done? You can unmute or you can chat. I'm curious, because it shouldn't be hard to think about that. You would think that a good bystander might actually stop and pay attention and to offer aid. Well, I will tell you, this bystander did not. This bystander did not, and I think about that, and it still haunts me to this day. But the reasons why I was not a bystander, why do you think that I did not stop? This is actually my next slide, so this is perfect. Why do you think people don't act? You have a circle called Miracle Circle because it's a miracle you can get there. Hey, that's awesome, Lizzie. It could have been a trap. Very, very common thought process. It might be more dangerous for you to stop and render aid. Would it be another reason why myself or any other bystander would not stop to help somebody? In a rush. That's 100% why I did not stop right there. We were in a rush. Somebody else will do it. Spot on. Spot on. That's exactly right. Any other reason? Does anybody else have a reason why they wouldn't stop? There's no shame. I mean, I'm telling you that I did not stop. So, you know, here I am teaching this and didn't stop. Bystander effect. Yes, Yuri, absolutely. Ooh, Amy, you even told me the bystander effect. When there are greater amounts of people, there's a psychological effort not to help. That's 100% accurate. There was a lot of people in that intersection. Remember I said it was the busiest intersection and there's a lot of people. So the bystander effect was in full force. Everybody thought they were going to act and nobody did, including myself. Let's see. People don't intervene for lots of reasons. We mentioned these. Personal safety. We're not really sure what's going on. Maybe we misunderstood something. You don't know people. I didn't know that person that was laying on the ground. Diffusion of responsibility. Well, it's not really my responsibility. Like, I'm not, you know, I don't have first aid training, you know, fear of judgment. Not happening to me and my friends, so I don't care. It's not my business. And I brought up the scenario of rendering first aid, but I want to also give you a couple scenarios for you to think about in your mind. Is that you guys mentioned that something that you're concerned about is maybe if somebody's not wearing a mask. Why would you not intervene in that scenario? You don't know people, fear of judgment. It's not happening to me. It's not my friends. They're not wearing a mask. It's not really my business. Maybe personal safety, you don't feel super concerned. or maybe you are concerned, you don't want to go near them because they don't have a mask on. These are all things, these reasons why people don't intervene is not just for medical situations. They are for scenarios and situations that we're going to experience on a daily basis when we come back to campus. Does that make sense? Everybody following me? Okay, cool. All right. So I'm curious, what scenarios besides, I know you guys mentioned not wearing a mask, what other scenarios are you anxious about encountering? Maybe you've already been on campus and you've already encountered a scenario when it comes to COVID prevention and behavior. What else what other scenarios are you anxious about? You can tell me in the chat or you can unmute yourself. I'm curious. People being, okay, so somebody said, you said you're having to argue with someone, okay? And Jonathan, or Joshua, you mentioned people being hostile against preventative measures. Do you have an example of a preventative measure? Like which one specific? Do you care? Because there's a lot of great ones.
Like mass social distancing, just, you know, going in and out of specified entrances and exits.
Yeah. Wearing a mask, Ruben. Having to argue some. Yuri, can you give me like a little bit more? Can you kind of narrow it down? It seems like it could having to argue with someone. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that? Like if I have to tell someone to put their mask, oh, and they refuse. Okay, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. I understand that much. Any other scenarios you guys are nervous about? Mask wearing, anything preventative, maybe distancing, getting too close together, right? We had a scenario come up that I had not expected on our campus is the laundry room. Do you guys have certain laundry rooms, facilities in your dorms? Well, I had no idea about that this would be such an issue, but it has on our campus that that the laundry rooms were the hangout place. And when you kind of change the amount of people that can go in the laundry room, people get upset. They are not happy that you're taking away their hangout place, especially when it's kind of hidden and they feel like they can get away with some things that they wouldn't be able to get away with, you know, in the common areas. So these are great scenarios, and you guys, we can't expect that we're not going to be able to hide or get to turn away and not face these scenarios head on. They're going to happen. So let's put ourselves in these situations and talk about how do we respond, connecting with emotion, connecting with empathy. Okay, so here we go. So there's the 4 Ds I want to teach you. The 4 Ds is in dog. So there's 4 things that you can do when in any of these situations, these scenarios that you guys are nervous about. The first one is to be direct. To be direct with your language. Point out what situations are unsafe or what behaviors are inappropriate. So an example could be, I noticed that you don't have your mask on. Is everything okay? I feel really nervous when you stand close to me without a face covering. So you didn't mention necessarily, hey, put your mask on, or hey, back up, you know? So you didn't really come across as mean and argumentative. It says, I noticed, I feel really nervous. So you're using I statements, and it puts the focus on the speaker, on you, as opposed to the person that you're speaking to. Does that make sense? Thumbs up when I say I statements, you guys know what I'm talking about. So I statements, I notice that you don't have your mask on. When you point out the behavior specifically, you're direct. You know, you're being very direct with the behavior that you're talking about, and you're being very direct with the emotion that you feel. I feel really nervous about when you stand close to me without a face covering. So that is an example of being direct. Close that out. Okay. So the second D is to be distract. We'll go back to the I statements. Distract. So maybe creating a distraction to remove the individual from the situation. Oftentimes this can be you coming up with an excuse, or so, you know, and if this doesn't correct the behavior, it helps remove the person who feels super awkward. So if you're in a situation in a group of people and it's very evident that somebody does not feel comfortable around somebody else, you can easily create a distraction to help remove them from the scenario, remove them from the environment. I'm going to go back to these I statements because we were using them. So there's 4 I statements that I teach my students often, all the time. And it's I see, I feel, I want, and I will. And when we use I statements, we're able to take the focus off of the person that's not behaving appropriately and putting the focus on you. So I see as opposed to you are, I feel versus I don't like that, you know, like when you're talking about somebody not doing something. So I feel nervous. And you could say I want and I will. Does that make sense? So when you use I statements, you're able to not make somebody feel attacked, that they're not in trouble necessarily, but you're just pointing out some education using I statements. So the 4 Ds: being direct, distracting, delegating. Delegating would be calling upon somebody else to have you help them or have them help you. So maybe it's your supervisor, maybe it's a professor, or maybe it's the RAs. So we had a situation on campus recently where there's a bunch of people wearing, not wearing masks, playing a volleyball game. And I say a bunch of people, it was like a 3-on-3 game. But a lot of people didn't know how to handle that scenario. And so a lot of people just were really frustrated and really angry. And so what could have happened was somebody could have gone in to get their RA or to get the area director or to get a person in charge to help them take action. I'm not expecting anybody to ever feel comfortable and confident to intervene in every situation. And so that's why a lot of people choose to delegate, so that they can ask for help. They can ask for somebody else to come partner with them, to stand with them, or to help them say something and you don't even have to be there in that situation. So delegate is one of the best Ds, the best tools in your toolkit when you have a situation or scenario that you don't want to be a part of. The last D is to be delay, to check in afterwards, especially if somebody feels nervous or anxious and you're sensing those emotions. If you don't feel comfortable, if it's not safe, or if you don't have a whole lot of time, you can always check in with them afterwards. And so it kind of looks like this. I noticed that you seemed agitated today when you were in the group of people outside the dining hall. Is everything okay? So you're checking in with that person later. You don't necessarily have to intervene right there in that moment. I feel really nervous when you came up to me today without a face covering. So you can check in with them later. You're delaying your check-in, you're delaying your intervention, you're delaying your action, but you're still at some point having action. Does that make sense? So 4 Ds, there's I'll go through them real fast. Direct, distract, delegate, and delay. So now we're going to actually put this into practice, and I know we have maybe about 10 minutes, and this is the heart of it. So I know that this is the home stretch, but I want to encourage you guys to really put forth your effort, because this is where you will face this every single day on campus. The things that you're most nervous about are the things that we're probably the least comfortable with. And so I wanted to bring this up to you guys so you can be able to real play these scenarios that you're nervous about, and using those 4 Ds to have the tools to talk to those people. So here's your scenarios. You see someone without a mask on in a classroom. See, when someone is standing really close to you, when someone doesn't wear a mask near you, and when you hear comments about COVID-19 that don't agree with. So maybe somebody's like, oh, it's just a hoax, or it's not real. You probably hear those all the time. So how are you going to intervene? How are you going to connect with these students and support them without coming across as the police, quote unquote, or the person who enforces the policy, but somebody who educates and supports them? So these are your 4 scenarios. You get to pick which one. I would encourage you to pick the one that's the most real to you, the one that you've already experienced, or the one that you're most nervous about. And we're going to put you into breakout group, and just with one other person. So we're going to put you with one other person, and I want you to use the 4 Ds and make comment with the person who is offending the situation. So 2 people in a group, one person's going to intervene, and one person is going to be the problem maker. So that person will be real playing the person without a mask on, or maybe that person's going to be real playing standing too close to you and making comments, and you will intervene and you will talk to them about what to do and what to say. Does anybody have any quick questions or comments or concerns before we put you into breakout groups? I'd love to hear what you have. Any questions or concerns? You can unmute yourself. Okay. Steve, would you mind putting everybody in a breakout group? Just 2 people, and I would love for them to have, let's do 6 minutes, and at the 3-minute mark, if you can give them a message to say switch roles. So everybody's going to have the role of the intervener, the person who's going to be saying something, and everybody's going to have the opportunity to real play and be the person who's causing them trouble, if that makes sense.
All right.
So
The group.
I'm gonna, yeah, I'm gonna put the I statements really fast in the chat box, so that way you guys have them. Let's see here. As a reference. Okay. There we go. Okay. 1, 2, 3, go, Steve.
All right, so the groups are all set up. I know we had some tech issues before. Hopefully we should be good. I guess send me a chat if there's a problem in your group. But here we go.
All right, here we are. Okay, great. Well, I'm curious how that went. Was that easier or harder than you guys expected and anticipated when you were connecting and doing as intervening in a scenario? Was that harder or easier? Tell me. Will you unmute yourself? I'm curious. Who can tell me how their experience was? Harder. Raquel says harder. Was it easier to go with the flow than out in the world? True. I understand that much. Anybody else thought the same or something similar or different? Was it harder or easier? I'm not an actor. Yeah. I think I can totally understand and empathize with how it was harder and easier. Harder because you actually have to say something. And it's just you and the other person. You can't just fumble your way through a conversation and get distracted and ignore the person or totally beat around the bush. Like, hey, here's a coloring page, you know? And, you know, because when we do handouts or tabling events, we do a lot of giveaways. We give out a lot of things like colors and coloring pages. So I think a lot of times our students would rather not have those hard conversations, but to just give them something else. Like give them a stress ball, give them a piece of candy, give them a coloring page and not have the hard, awkward conversations. So I think it could be way harder for sure. Well, I want you to think about the first time you ever either did a push-up or you did the monkey bars. And it might have been so long ago because you're a kid, but I want to know, how was that? Was that easy at first? Were you successful the first time you did 100 push-ups or 1 push-up?
I still can't do a push-up.
It's hard? What did you say?
I still can't do a push-up.
You still can't do a push-up?
No, I don't bother trying.
Well, it's hard, isn't it? It is hard. I guess the metaphor I'm trying to get to is that this is a skill. Nobody gets strong by lifting weights one day. Nobody gets healthy by eating 1 vegetable on the first day, right? This is a skill set. And if I'm quite frank with you guys, this is a skill set that you will have for the rest of your life. You may not be always intervening and talking about COVID-19, God help us, you know, but you will have these skill sets of how to talk to somebody when you don't agree with them, or when you need to intervene in a situation, in a scenario that is not safe or not easy or hard or tricky or emotional. You're never not going to have these scenarios in your life. So for you to build this skill set, for you to get good at talking to people, for you to get good at intervening is going to serve you very well for the rest of your life. So I don't want you to run from these situations, even though they're really hard. The only way they get easier is by doing it. The only way it gets easier by doing the monkey bars is doing the monkey bars. The only way it gets easier by running, if you want to run a marathon, is actually running 1 yard or 100 yards and then 1 mile, right? You have to practice. So I just want to encourage you that even if you fail, even in your opinion, even if you stumble across this conversation that can be really hard and icky and awkward, you're still giving yourself and your body and your mind experience, okay? So remember the 4 Ds. Who can say them? Who remembers the 4 Ds? You can unmute yourself or you can put in a chat box. Who remembers the 4 Ds? Anybody? Bueller? Bueller?
Direct, delegate, delay, and distract.
Yay, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, last question. How can we support other student health ambassadors on your campus? If you are with a partner in crime or with another health ambassador and they feel like they need or want to intervene, how can you help support them? What are some things that you can do? What do you think you could do?
You could probably just ask what they need help with, and
I love it. Yeah, ask them. Hey, how can I help you? Anything else? Any other way we could help them? There's other answers. It's not the only answer. Yeah. How about just standing really confidently next to them and not pulling away? Share the workload. Physically going to help. Going in personally, standing next to them. It's even harder. I think what makes the breakout rooms that we did a little bit harder is because you were the only one, right? You were the only one trying to intervene. So going there so that they're not alone. Absolutely. Okay, well, that is my portion of the presentation. I hope that you guys have some tools, some phrases to use when you're talking with students. Remember, we're not enforcing any policy. We're not the mask police, right? But we can educate students like, hey, did you know? Hey, I wonder how you feel, or hey, is everything okay? These are great segues into conversations that you can educate students on what your campus is trying to do. And those are the 4 Ds that you can say, or those are the emotional connections like empathy and sympathy. Okay, I think I'm going to share the screen or have Steve take over, yeah?
Yep. All right, Kenda, thank you so much. Yes, if you can stop sharing. All right, gang. Hey, we are in the home stretch. I know this has been a long time, so we appreciate you hanging in there. Let me share my screen. And I am guilty as charged of not advancing my slides like I should have. Let's see, actually, I'm going to do this. Hold on. I was doing so well with technology too, I thought. All right, start thinking about, so one thing that you're going to remember. One thing, if you had to say, okay, here's a big takeaway from the day, what would that look like? All right, now I'm going to reshare my screen. What do you know? Okay, so either just unmute and if you had to say, okay, what's a highlight? What's one thing that I'm really going to remember as I venture into this this process of being a student health ambassador? So you can either put it in the chat or you can unmute.
I'll start. Taking ideas from what they've done at UNCA and also at Western Carolina with the stickers and stuff as a reward if you're practicing safe social distancing or wearing a mask. I definitely think that would help if we can somehow come up with a program like that at Marshall.
Okay. Well, I don't have my chat pulled up as I'm sharing, so can you help me if people are throwing stuff in the chat?
Absolutely. I was actually going to highlight Lizzie. Lizzie was saying that she's not going to point her toes while she's talking to someone. That is an awesome tip because you want to be more welcoming. Great job.
Anybody else? What you're going to remember? 4Ds, I hope, right? We spent a good amount of time on that. So, you know, trying to handle scenarios as they come up, and that's a skill that you're going to keep practicing and feel more comfortable with. Cole, anything else in the chat there?
We just got something from Dr. Hunt. Our student health ambassadors do not need to have all the answers. You guys just need to rather be the initiative to find out. So ask if you don't know, and we'll do great.
Absolutely. Okay. What questions are coming to mind, if any? I know this is a dangerous question to ask 15 minutes before you're supposed to be wrapping up, but any questions? And or what are you looking forward to? Maybe that's an easier thing to answer at this point. So at least one thing you're looking forward to as you get going with being an ambassador.
Lizzie, thank you again. Looks like she is excited about befriending other student health ambassadors. And let's see, Sabrina from Marcel agrees.
Okay. All right, thank you. Let me jump back here. So just a couple last things. We might even get you out early, everybody. So logistics and next steps. Hopefully you are aware of kind of who the contact is going to be at your institutions. But I did want to make sure that we put that information up there. And so I think in most cases, they've already reached out and certainly they've been a part of the hiring process. So I think you know them, but anyway, there is that information just in case. Next steps, and these are suggestions, and I'm going to try and follow up. Cole and I will follow up with the ambassador leads at each college or university about some of these. Because again, the exciting part is that we've hopefully given some foundation, but now you can take this in a direction that you feel like will really make a difference on your specific campus. So to try and do a brief training review, scenario focused, that is an option that will include, we'll send that out to the ambassador leads, and they can utilize that if they want. It is scenario based, I should say. We suggest a 1 to 2 hour meeting in the next week with your ambassadors and your lead. And so really coming together with the goals, and these are our goals, so they might change a little bit for you certainly, but we thought these were helpful starting points. And so first of all, getting to know each other. It's very possible that there's some people that you're going to work with as ambassadors that you don't know. And so that hopefully is a very good first step. Review campus policies and resources. That's going to be critical in your role as you're helping people. You need to know the policies, and so spend some time on what your university college specific policies are, and then what resources are available to them. We'd suggest drafting 3 or more initial goals as you get going. And so again, think about needs, but a jump start at least with getting going with some initial goals, and then I'm sure those will continue to progress throughout the semester. Pick a weekly or bi-weekly meeting. For the semester, we'd suggest that in the first month, if possible, to try and meet weekly. It'll just help to get things moving a little bit faster and to get things off the ground. And then you'll want to, and some of this again is for the leads, but discuss other logistics, thinking about signing up for shifts, how to submit hours, getting paid. That's a big one, right? So even coming to the training today, these are hours that you can get paid for. And so we want to make sure that the leads know they're identifying, I think is a better way to say it, that the process is for getting you paid. And certainly if there are questions there for the leaders at each institution, Cole and I can try and work with you on that. We do want to let you know that we're going to be working on t-shirts for you. And so we're hoping to get those cranked around pretty quickly, along with some kind of badge, because as you go into this work, we think it's important that you stand out, that people know that you're an ambassador. And kind of the last thing I wanted to mention before we put the t-shirt screen up is that just to, you know, another role is to keep participating in trainings. And so Cole and I, that's one of our jobs. Actually, a big part of our jobs is to make sure that we're providing you with ongoing trainings and cross communication between some of the campuses, because hopefully some of the ideas that you heard from Western and UNCA, maybe those were they were spark plugs for you, you know, where you're going to be able to take some of those ideas and run with them, and you're going to come up with ideas that another campus would love to implement potentially. And so we're hoping for some dialogue between the different campuses on ideas that are taking place, and so then that you can take those, perhaps if they fit at your institution and with your capacity, and to try and run with those. The last thing, so we want to get some t-shirt sizes. Cole, I don't know if we finalized this. I think we're trying to say this is probably a unisex t-shirt. And so kind of keep that in mind when it comes to that. But we want to give you a t-shirt, and we'd like to give you the correct size that you'd like to wear. And so before you leave, if you can just go ahead and use the QR code and do it for the appropriate school there, and let us know what size, and we will be hopefully getting t-shirts sent out to you very quickly. So Cole, is there one takeaway, one thing that you want the ambassadors to remember?
Yeah, I'd love everybody to make sure they had just plenty of questions moving forward. It's always better to have questions than to think you have all the answers. So if you can, ask questions, and then ask your leads so that they can ask us, and so then we can come right back down and give you guys really good answers, because we are all working together on this.
Good stuff. All right, and I think we're all in it together in terms of figuring out how to make the ambassador program work, but then how to support students and to really make this a great fall. So that's it. Congratulations, you have made it through this initial training, and so please go ahead, fill out the t-shirts, and then you are free to take off after that. So thank you very, very much.